Welcome, reanimated corpses, red herrings, and polygons, to episode 454 of an Unearthly Podcast, streaming live on the 28th of June, 2022, and featuring the Web of Fear animated reconstruction, written by Mervyn Haseman and Henry Lincoln, and starring Patrick Troutman as the Doctor, Fraser Hines as Jamie McCrimmon, and Deborah Watling as Victoria Waterfield. I am our host, Bill Sylvia, the One in Black, and with me are color commentator Alex Fireheart.
An interesting selection of red herrings we do have in this story.
And technical director Mad Matt Winchell.
I've seen far uglier polygons.
Randy Ronson McCulloch is my words got twisted a bit there. He's under the weather. That's what I was trying to say. A bit today and will not be able to join us. Hopefully he's feeling better soon.
Yes, and in case you're also wondering why we didn't show up last week, he was also still feeling under the weather, got better, and then got worse again. And I was not available last week, so I couldn't do anything with the streams, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I almost said out for the weather, and I stopped myself in time to be like, that's not the saying.
Out for the weather. That doesn't sound right. What?
And then part of me also wanted to say...
It sounds like he's out for a walk, and I don't see Randy going out for walks.
But part of me also wanted to say down for the count. So I was like, down for the count, under the weather, out for the night. I can't say all three of them at one time. The ADHD brain needs to focus on one at a time.
Very badly.
So how are you all 2 weeks? How are all of your 2 weeks have been? How have your weeks been? Whatever. Words. Words.
English language. What the hell does any of this mean anymore?
I know the important words. It's the words in between. But yes, somebody talk so I don't have to.
No, I haven't been too bad. I mean, most of my time was spent watching like the two movies that I'll be talking about later, and like I don't even know how many episodes of Naruto Shippuden at this point, but I've got less than 100 episodes left to go, and I had more than 200 to go when I started, so like a couple of weeks ago, so I'm plowing through it. But now that I'm back at work, because I'm not sick anymore, I mean, I've got like a bit of a cough at the moment, but it's negligible. I think it's just kind of a lack of sleep kind of a cough more than anything else. Because the kind of annoying thing was, like, 2 nights ago, yesterday I was able to actually wake up at like 8:30 when my alarm went off and went, oh, I'm actually feel relatively well rested, even though I didn't get a full 8 hours of sleep. And then I wasn't asleep this morning until like after 3 a.m. I was like, oh, well, that sucks.
Well, today's the middle of my 3 days off that I have from work. I believe over the last 2 weeks I had at least one 6-day week, a day or two off, then back on for 3 days, and now I'm back off again for 3 days. I'm going to be on again after tomorrow for 1 day, off again another day, and then on for 4 days over the 4th. So that's just going to be like a weird seesaw. Oh yeah, and I was supposed to have a few short days during that long stretch in particular, but everything got extended.
Of course. Still better to have 6-day weeks and then some time off rather than 13-day weeks.
Oh, fuck me, you better be paying me an extra $5 an hour at that point if you're going to push me to 13 days in a row. There better be some extra moolah on that, or otherwise I'm going to be looking for another job pronto. Enough's enough of that kind of stuff.
Right. So on my own end, I finally got an eye exam. My opening came up, and that is definitely actually the farthest that I've walked. It wasn't really that big of a walk. But due to working from home and, over the summer and then my body getting used to it and then trying to get myself used to moving again, it was basically, I took a bus, walked a mile and a half back to the bus, and then took a bus home. That was the most I had walked at any one time since March, which is something I'm trying to keep my body used to. Because apparently the reason my feet have been swelling up and not fitting in my shoes is because my heart hasn't been like having enough reason to pump enough to keep everything stable. So I'm realizing I just need to be walking a lot more often, especially since I need to fit into, dress shoes for a conference in 3 weeks. Less than that now. Otherwise, I haven't done anything especially new. Other than I have over the past month been listening to the first 8th of March set from Big Finish, which is 8th of March being International Women's Day. I'm not going to say too much in case we choose to review it in the future. But what I will say is that I didn't dislike it. It was 4 stories that were not related to each other at all, and it really they kind of realized they did not want it to be women heroes and men villains, so it was mostly women versus women, which just because male characters exist, you end up with some male damsels in distress, but apparently not intentionally. So it's not like entirely it's not like entirely focused on misogyny or patriarchy or anything like that. It's just kind of spotlighting, here are some women characters that people like to see stories with, and we're putting them in a set together.
Right.
I'm going to listen to the second set of that next, and I expect it to be very similar. Although I know that one is some characters that we have not seen in a while, so I'm looking forward to that one.
Well, I did read something recently, but I'll be getting into that later on.
Okay.
I did add my own little tidbit to the
gotcha.
Last section there before we start the review.
Okay.
I did also order some extra stuff revolved around that too, because apparently that company who produced that book also is now producing merchandise. So they have an action figure, which is now in the mail.
I did learn something, but I learned it right after it would have been nice to learn. So there's 2 theaters in my town, and they have a very similar name. So I thought that they were just 2 different locations showing the same things. But apparently it's one is a bit more mainstream, and the one I've been going to is mostly indie stuff. So they'll show blockbusters for they'll show a mainstream movie for 2 weeks and then get rid of it. So I thought I only had 2-week window to watch each movie. But apparently if I went
if you went the other way to the other one, you'd actually have a better chance of seeing that.
Right.
More
yeah,
movie.
it looks like they have more theaters and they show more mainstream things at a time. And the reason I found that out was apparently they had just done an anniversary screening of John Carpenter's The Thing. That, it was a one-time thing that I missed because I didn't even know that theater did things like that. So it's nice to know that. It would have been even nicer to know it a week earlier.
Right. This town hasn't had it. Actually, this got brought up at work. This town hasn't had a theater since like the 90s, if not the 80s.
Oh wow.
Yeah. One gal mentioned that she actually saw the original Star Wars at the theater here in town when it existed. Oh. That's how old that theater used to be. This town is getting big enough they could probably afford to make a small theater somewhere. Actually, they probably could place it right where that empty Shopco is. Could put at least a couple theaters in there.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where like the pandemic probably stalls any plans that they might have.
Well, I'm just saying that's something they could do. It's not so much the plan that there is a plan for it.
Oh, like it wouldn't surprise me if someone was maybe thinking of, but now once COVID hit, they're like, I'll wait.
Actually, I know that Shopco gets rented out for things, but I can't remember what it was anymore. But it would be better put to use if they could put something in there regularly. But anyway, is there anything else I want to mention? Been working a lot. Oh yeah, and among my extended days, I actually got asked in early, so that became a 9-hour day, and then the person who was supposed to replace me was about a half hour late because they're not always in town, so that turned into a 9.5-hour day.
Of course.
No.
So yeah, that was pretty. And then I found out on my way out of the building today because I stopped by to grab some groceries. That in a couple of days I'll be working alongside my assistant manager, who will be there for 10.5 hours. Yeah.
All right. So on tonight's show, we'll talk about a 2 weeks worth of birthdays and news, which is not a lot of news, but a lot of birthdays. We have a bit of geek talk.
Are fast.
Yep. A bit of geek talk to discuss, but not as much as there could be. And then we have our episode summary, our review, final thoughts, and ratings. So we start with Alex with the birthdays.
Yep. So on the 16th of June, we had Carol Ann Ford, who played Susan Foreman from 63 to 64, and again in 83, and again in that one time we don't talk about.
I forgot she was in that.
Yep. And she turned 82. And also on the 16th, we have Michael Kilgariff. Not too sure if I got that right, but oh well. Who played the
any of us would have gotten.
Who played the cyber controller in 67 and 85, among other roles. And he turned 85.
He was in Dark Crystal.
Ah.
Huh.
Yeah, he played one of the big crow people.
But not electronic, I guess.
No, one of the big bird people that have the Dark Crystal.
And on the 17th of June, we have Jodie Whittaker, the current Doctor, who will be finishing up her run this year after starting in 2018. She turned 40, and on the same day, we have Arthur Darvill, who played Rory Williams from 2010 until 2013, who also turned 40. So, yeah, that's an interesting thing to realize.
Born same day, same year.
I hope they had a birthday party on the Broadchurch set when they worked together on that.
Right.
Yeah. And moving forward to the 22nd of June, we have Ian Levine, the composer of the K9 and Company theme music.
K9.
Preserver of missing Doctor Who episodes, falsely labeled on Doctor Who Guide as a director of Planet of the Giants, who turned 69.
I had to get that bit in there because I don't know why. I don't know why they said he directed that episode, but he didn't.
I don't know. But I also do see that he's constantly a script consultant and a couple other things, though, too.
Yes, I think he was in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. A fan like us, because they always had to have fanboys who understood continuity to help them.
So moving to the 23rd, we have Caitlin Blackwood, who played Amelia Pond, young Amelia Pond, from 2010 to 2012. She turned 22. Wow. She's exactly a decade younger than me. Or at least not exactly, but you know.
She's a young adult now. Yeesh.
Yeah. I wonder.
I think she's the age Karen was when she played the character.
Just about.
Probably. Because it'll be interesting to see if she's actually aged in a way where she could still double as her.
Kinda almost. She definitely still has the ginger hair.
Though I think they are like cousins or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
There are some vague similarities, which is kind of interesting.
They're distant enough cousins that they hadn't met until they were on the Doctor Who set, but they are related.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, on the 24th we have Yasmin Page, who played Maria Jackson in 2007-2008. She turned 31. On the 25th, we have Sheridan Smith, the Eighth Doctor, who played the Eighth Doctor companion Lucy Miller, who turned 41. And also on the 25th, we have Lucy Benjamin, who played the child version of Nyssa in 83, who turned 52. On the 28th, we have Daniel Webber, who played Darius Pike, who turned 34.
Weren't we trying to figure out his age like a month ago?
I think so.
Now we have that.
Yeah. Because I think it was like he was like the oldest of the
air quotes kids. Yeah.
Yeah. By like, I think he was like 22 or something when they were doing that or something like that.
Oh yeah, I wrote out the next character's full name, assuming I would say it. It's up to you whether you want to. I'll leave it up to your judgment.
Yeah, we have Lala Ward, who, I can't even remember how to pronounce that, but I'll try. Ramana Varatralunda. Close enough, I guess. But yes, otherwise known as Ramana for short.
Terribly sorry.
From 79 to 81, and again in Big Finish. Off and on. She turned 71. And only because it's topical, Stephen Whitaker, who played Craftsman Weems in The Web of Fear, would have been 55, but died in 2003 at the age of 75.
That's definitely a typo of some sort. He would not have been 55.
Nah.
I don't know what I was trying to type. 2003 was 19 years ago, so 95. I don't know why I wrote 55.
You're all kinds of fumbling tonight, aren't you?
Hey, there were a lot of birthdays, and I deleted a third of them because there were so many.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, I also didn't catch it, and I was the one reading it, so...
No, I heard that math and went, wait, something's not right here.
Yeah.
One of these numbers doesn't match with the others.
All right. So moving on to our Doctor Who news, we have some filming updates. And interestingly, when I ordered these links, I just based it on because one of them looks like it's a setup and one of it looks like the actual scene. But looking at it now after the fact, just going over it for like the third time, I'm realizing it's because some of it is set in the modern day and some of it's in the past. Just based on the vehicles used.
Mm.
But so looking at the first link we have here, so this is Doctor Who filming in Bristol, and as far as we know, it's the 60th anniversary because we're probably not getting a whole season of David Tennant and Catherine Tate.
Most likely
but we
not.
really don't know. Like, there seems to be a lot of filming with them, so who knows what's actually going on.
I think Russell's got enough on his hands. We don't need him to burn out literally on one special.
I mean, I would not be shocked. I would not be shocked knowing Russell if he's like, no, the 60th anniversary special is an entire season of David Tennant in between the seasons of Doctor Who. Or like a 6-part serial like Flux.
Mm.
Once again, Russell, no. Russell, please.
Oh, and there's also extra. So the based on those little cards they use to start filming, this does say episode 3. So there's at least 3 of something. So maybe it is closer to that than I thought. I just said it as a joke, but maybe it is.
I mean, I guess it would explain why they're filming this far ahead of time. Because otherwise it's like, well, this is far out of the way to film a one-off special. Before it had been reasoned.
If the one-off special is followed the next month by a full season, they would probably want it done and out of the way ahead of time. But yeah.
Can I say I'm amused that I just noticed one of the image sets here? Yeah, Catherine Tate is running around in a Scooby-Doo shirt.
But like I remember one of the speculations I'd seen and that sort of made sense at the time was just that like they were doing this so far ahead of time because maybe they wouldn't have been able to get Tennant to do it next year.
That's possible too. Or Tate. They're both they're both successful. They're both probably very busy. Apparently there are in-universe dates that say October 30, 1925. So these scenes in this first link are set during that time. And there's plenty of I don't know 1920s vehicles. To me, they all look like a Ford Model T. But there are that style of vehicle.
A lot of them back then would have been kind of sort of like that. It wasn't until like the 40s that you would definitely have seen what looks more like a modern car.
And Ford was the first to really mass produce them in the way that we think of mass producing them. So they probably all did look,
They all did look like Model Ts, more
models,
or less.
They probably look fairly similar, yeah.
Yeah. Anybody who was trying to mass produce them would have a lot of them looking very similar like that for a while.
David Tennant reading a script, sure.
Actually, yeah, it would be because people were participating in races that the big cars became more and more sleek and would start looking more and more modern. Because the first racing cars were basically looking like Model Ts, just that they removed half the cab. To make it faster. And probably half the seats, too.
Anybody see anything on the first link they want to mention before we go on to the next one?
Nothing else.
I saw the Scooby-Doo shirt you mentioned. Although it looks like she's not wearing that when filming. Because
that's not while filming. The filming looks like she has a pink shirt on.
Yep. Pink and red stripes. I guess makes sense. They don't want to pay Hanna-Barbera for the rights.
Right. Something more generic while we're on set.
There's the green
break.
They're sticking up green screens, so I'm guessing there's probably a CGI alien.
I'm actually thinking more like they're altering backgrounds a bit to look less modern, is also what I'm thinking.
Oh, that's true. They could be like, well...
Yeah.
They're blocking out certain like modern buildings and stuff so they're not shot. While still using the historical ones that they can get.
Especially since they're not going to clean up all the street art and everything that looks too modern.
Yeah, they'll shoot around it or try to green screen out anything else that they can get rid of.
Right. So moving on to the second link, which was actually posted earlier. So the first one there is interesting in the sense that it's related to some of the speculation about who Neil Patrick Harris is playing. It is a magic / toy store that seems to appear in both both what looks like the modern and the past version. They're doing touch-up work on it, so it is a set. It's not just something. I see
someone's already hinting at what I was initially thinking too. Is are we talking Celestial Toy Maker again? Because that is an old villain that could use a comeback.
There is a sign on the wall saying Toy Maker of the Year. So they're definitely using the name, the words Toy Maker, if not the name, but it's definitely possible that they're going to bring it back. Oh, yes, this is the Toy Maker and leave out the Celestial part.
Toy Maker of the Year. Oh, look, dominoes.
We have some posters that look like they're for a circus with what looks like, I think that's Neil Patrick Harris's character on them.
Kind of looks like it, yeah, and he's there with a creepy-looking clown when clowns were not this familiar from the Toy Maker. I believe there's a couple of them when we last met.
And that, I noticed it has a December date on it. Is there a year listed?
December 14th December to the 30th. I don't see a year.
Other than that, I'm pretty sure it's definitely not the 1920s because nobody was paying £10 for a ticket for anything in the 1920s.
So it's probably closer to modern, yeah. Market stalls and graffiti are now placed for filming that is almost certainly Doctor Who.
Also, there's a mention of credit cards on the that poster.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, that'd be a giveaway.
Oh, and I just realized the word website. Yeah.
Oh, yep.
So it's set past the year 2000. We can safely say, probably in modern day.
And I see it could
be 2008. It could be 2008 too. We really don't know with the whole Donna thing.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, RTD was kind of teasing Doctor Who magazine about how it could be possible for this story to happen, but he threw out like 5 possibilities and said, "I'm not very well going to tell you in the magazine article now, am I?" So I did not include that in the news.
You know, that's an interesting thing that I hadn't thought of. Is that it probably wouldn't be. But an interesting connection someone else made was that it could somehow relate to the story The Greatest Show in the Galaxy.
Yeah, it's a little less likely. That was kind of a one and done.
Gods of Ragnarok?
Yeah, the Gods of Ragnarok.
Which I feel like
I guess
be
in
more
this case,
than
the Psychic
just
Circus.
Neil Patrick Harris, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, if that was going to be the case, they would have most likely had Patrick Harrison also in clown makeup, so... And less of an actual showman, but we'll have to wait and see, I guess.
Scrolling down a bit, we see a car that's used in some other shots, and I think
a
on
couple
the left,
vehicles on fire.
I think that vehicle on the left, that black vehicle, might be one of the ones we saw a unit using in other filming.
Oh, having scrolled down far enough, I just found a new modern unit uniform. Yeah, they definitely got rid of the
you
house.
scroll down farther than I have.
I just kept going.
Mhm.
God, the
But I know
logo on that.
I'm not sure if you see it in any photos, but I watched some of the videos earlier, and you could see like the Doctor and Neil Patrick Harris like yelling at each other in the middle of the street, while the mob is just like going wild around them, and other mentions like pedestrians are randomly fighting each other, according to the people who wrote the article.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I see there's different angles of that, of course.
Oh, yeah, we saw Donna and her grandfather in the wheelchair.
Oh yes, yep, that's toward the
And I
bottom of
just
the
see
page,
a
right?
shot now later on that he's no longer in the wheelchair.
Oh,
Mm-hmm. She just finds an empty wheelchair. It's like, oh.
oh, and we get some close-ups of Neil Patrick Harris. I didn't see those earlier. So there was graffiti saying "flux," and there's a person wearing a sandwich board saying "the end of times." Kind of makes me wonder if this is going to tie into the whole flux end of the universe plot in any way.
Meh.
Oh, I see why I didn't see the Unit 1-4 because it's flagged for potentially sensitive content.
Oh.
Okay. Like I had to click OK to view it, unless you were looking at. Oh, maybe you were looking at the one underneath it, which is not flagged that way.
Yeah, the one underneath it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, there's a whole bunch of like different body armor on there, which kind of looks more like it looks almost more like armor I'd expect to see in a Ninja Turtles movie than in Doctor Who.
Well, actually, seeing like the 4 other members as you're paging down to the next one, it kind of reminds me of more of like a SWAT unit.
I'm guessing all those like shapes on the armor are supposed to be like they would make bullets ricochet off them or something.
Yeah, that'd be like to help dampen any contact damage they might take.
Right. So they look more like a hard foam than Kevlar. So maybe it looks. Although that said, these are not like final photos. These are people taking photos from offset. So maybe the special effects department does something to make it look better.
I'm not so sure about that, but I'm
like
sure
even
I'm
changing
sure,
the lighting may make it look better.
Yeah.
So.
I'm sure that even the changing the lighting could change how these things kind of come off. Honestly,
Right.
honestly, I don't mind them. At least they don't look like obvious football pads, so it looks like it could take a bullet. That's all I care. And at least they're not trying to pass that stuff off as medieval armor. Shame.
True. or space armor.
Or space armor. Yeah, it's weird modern pseudo bulletproof armor from a high-tech unit of some kind that's still on modern Earth.
So, as much as I miss that, like I feel like Copebox used to do a better job of like finding the information and telling us what was in it, rather than just showing us 30 tweets and letting us figure it out for ourselves. But it's at least a little fun to go through it and find stuff that I missed earlier on in the day.
Right.
But so I think we've covered everything there is to talk about here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, which brings us to our last article, and that is the 2022 Scribe Awards. So not only were Big Finish nominated for the audio drama category, But apparently, out of 6 nominations for the category, all 6 went to Big Finish. They were all for Doctor Who stories.
Yeah, so just basically Big Finish dominated the market on audio.
Big Finish Doctor Who specifically, not just Big Finish in general. Which, I mean, that's the majority of their work anyway.
Well, I guess it's the majority of their work. They still do have a lot of other shows, but yeah, they do multiple shows of Doctor Who. So
right. But so the Scribe Awards are from the International Association of Media Tie-in Writers. So basically, any licensed media works, or what some people would derisively call professional fan fiction, would fit into these awards. This being specifically audio dramas. So the first one I mentioned is the Ninth Doctor Girl Deconstructed, which I recognize from my to listen list for the very near future, that we're going to be reviewing soon. The Fifth Doctor Adventures: The Lost Resort, which I at least have not been following the Fifth Doctor Adventures much. There's a new companion by the name of Mark that they mention here. Oh, in the wake of Adric's death, so I guess this is set during that same season.
Yeah.
The Lost Resort and Other Stories. More Ninth Doctors. We have Lost Warriors: The Curse of Lady Macbeth, and what looks like a cross between a kraken and almost like a xenomorph, just based on that the skeleton exoskeleton of that creature in the back.
Kind of almost looks like an elf hood, but it's hard to say. A little less humanoid though.
Right. More from the Lost Warriors box set. This is Monsters in Metropolis, which is about Cybermen, it looks like.
Yeah, that looks like a really interesting Cyberman look.
Yeah,
that's a little more retro, but with still touches of modern to it, which is kind of interesting.
Right. And it looks like it's on a film set. There's a film camera there. So I wonder if it has to do with the old silent movie. Oh, actually, yes. They say it's an unashamed love, or Cultbox describes it as an unashamed love letter to the influential Fritz Lang film Metropolis.
Ooh. Because I'm a big fan of the
So that'll
Fritz
be
Lang
interesting
movie.
when we get to that. Then we have from the Peladon box set, The Truth of Peladon. So that's part of the set, kind of continuing the story of what happened after those Third Doctor episodes on Peladon. Then we have the Third Doctor Adventures: The Annihilators. So that's the kind of the recast Third Doctor crossing over with the recast Second Doctor. And that's all 6 of them. So it might be worth it for us to make an effort to review all of these if they're all nominated for the award.
Right.
Considering half of them are on our half of them are on our list to review anyway, so.
All
right, and I think that is the end of our news. Oh no, it's not, because we have
That's the end of regular news. Here's some Big Finish. Hello, Bill? Bill? Did his microphone go?
Might have.
Shoot. Because I was actually worried for a moment, like, did Discord somehow mess up again? It'll be the first time since I put it on this computer. Nope. Nope, make me.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Where were we? Scroll down. Nope, scroll back up. So I guess I'll try to attempt to cover for Bill while Bill tries to recover from whatever's going on. So some Big Finish stuff coming up here. First up is the War Master Self-Defense. Coming out on June 16th of June, the War Master Self-Defense was released, featuring 4 stories written by Lou Morgan, Una McCormack, and Elizabeth Miles, and Lizzie Hopley, and star Jarek Jacobi and David Tennant, celebrating 15 years to the day since their characters were met on screen. After that, next slide, please. We have the 4th Doctor Adventures, Season 11, The 9. On the 21st of June, the 4th Doctor Adventures, The 9 was released, featuring 3 stories over 10 episodes, written by Guy Adams, Simon Bernard, Paul Morris, and Elizabeth Miles, starring Tom Baker. I remember there was mention of something called The 9, but I don't remember what it related to. And the next one's a Torchwood one. Next one is Torchwood Dead Plates released on the 23rd. Yep. Released on the 23rd of June. Torchwood Dead Plates was released, and it's written by David Llewellyn.
I think it's Llewellyn, I forget. It's Welsh.
That's right.
They're a bit tricky.
And is starring Murray Melvin as Billis Manger, the weird, pseudo-threatening guy from the first season finale. It seems that they're trying to further develop that character. And that would appear to be everything for Big Finish news. I believe the blue stuff, is Bill, so we currently don't have a Bill, but we can go on to your movie reviews really quick while we're waiting for Bill to come back.
I think I'm back.
Yep,
just in time. Okay.
For the second time,
he's kind of in and out.
I have had to switch to an even poorer connection because of my connections dying. So I see I'm in that in Discord, so that's what I. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Is it worth talking, or am I just not coming through?
You're coming through now. Sputtering, but you're slowly getting better.
Yeah. Okay. So hopefully I can switch back to a better Wi-Fi network soon, but right now this is the best I have.
All right. I just did the Big Finish releases for you.
Okay. Gotcha.
So we were just about to move on. So Kenobi, yes.
Okay, so hopefully I don't lose connection again in the middle of talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi. So the 6-part story of Obi-Wan Kenobi has ended. And this story was basically taking the Obi-Wan who was kind of in, a deep depression on Tatooine and kind of giving him reason to live again and be like the relatively happy Obi-Wan that we saw in A New Hope. It was also a story with mostly him and young Leia, which I think is nice because we don't actually get that many Leia-centric stories in Star Wars. Maybe they've changed that in recent years, but at least through most of my life, Luke has always had a lot more stories to him than Leia. As for the story itself, it's based... I'm just trying to think what to say without spoiling. But basically, it's. Are you having trouble hearing me? I keep hearing you about to say something. Okay.
No, you're going a little scattered for a moment, but you came back.
Oh, okay. Basically, it after something happens, Obi-Wan is trying to get Leia back home, and throughout this, they realize that Obi-Wan is the true target. So there's a whole bunch of various fights with him, which include basically reconnecting with who he was before Mustafar and of having a reason to live, while also seeing what the Empire has become around him. You also get to see some flashbacks played by modern day Hayden Christensen and modern day Ewan McGregor. Overall, I would say it's a solid story. I would say it doesn't mesh as well with A New Hope, having nothing here would have, because of course A New Hope kind of seemed to fit perfectly with the way Revenge of the Sith ended, at least for the discussion that seemed to be referencing Mustafar. But I think the story was worth tweaking that a little bit. Um, a new story involving focusing on a in this. And yeah, it's by no means essential viewing. It's not going to blow anyone out of the water. But it's just kind of a nice Star Wars story for people to enjoy. Apparently, it's the most streamed show on Disney Plus, which is kind of weird because, like I said, it's non-essential. This is something that really didn't need to exist, other than the fact that the characters are popular, and so why not? It didn't break any new ground. It was just kind of fun. If you enjoy Star Wars and you already have Disney Plus, I'd say there's no reason not to watch it. But I would not buy Disney Plus just for this at all.
Yeah.
And that's probably all I have to say on that.
All right. So on to Alex for recording, I guess.
Yeah, it's weird. I forget if it's just pronounced as rec or what.
I know it's short for recording on a VHS player.
Yeah.
I usually see people just call it rec.
Yeah. Yeah, I finally, kind of on a whim, I don't even know what convinced me to just kind of watch it, but I got around to watching the original rec, knowing that I had seen the US almost shot-for-shot remake Quarantine. Which, yeah, if you've seen one, you mostly have seen the other. Wow, it was kind of interesting watching this back and realizing, yeah, even if the shots aren't, literally the same, it's definitely a lot of scene for scene for the most part. And honestly, I can see why people talk up that the original Spanish one is better, because from even just by going from memory for a lot, because it's been a while since I saw Quarantine, the acting's a lot more realistic, which is what they were going for. Apparently a lot of the actors were unknowns. I think one of the firemen and a cop are the only two people who are played by known actors. The main woman that it follows, who's a reporter, is legitimately a reporter. I don't think she'd done any acting prior. She just was a reporter, so they hired her to play the reporter role.
Right.
Because she was probably trying to break into acting.
Probably more or less the same thing that was going on with the actor that got picked for Flash Gordon in the 80s movie. He literally appeared in one game show, and someone just went, "That guy." He's like, "Oh, I guess I'm kind of trying to get into acting." Sure.
Yeah, apparently even for this, they weren't even given full scripts. They were just kind of given sort of here's what you've got to do.
Yeah, here's what your role is.
And given ad-libbing. By the
and
sounds
here's what
of
happens
it, the
in your
ones
scene,
that got...
but you don't need to know what the rest of the scenes are.
Yeah. Apparently there were even some things they weren't told about, they'd get to a window and there'd actually be a lot of shit going on out the window. And the interesting thing as well is that even though it seems like it stands to reason to a point for a found footage movie, this is pretty much entirely shot in a real location that's just been done up. This is, rather than being on a set, this is an actual apartment block,
right,
or whatever that they've done this in, and it's holy shit. I assume one that probably wasn't being used, or that they just,
Yeah,
were
or
able to
it was
finagle it
an
or
area of town
something.
that was but basically going to get ripped down or whatever is going on there, like a business
Yeah.
section or something. Because that's also what they did with the original RoboCop, is that that scene towards the later third of the movie where the bad guys show up with the big cannons and start blowing up storefronts. That entire area was going to get ripped apart in like the next week and then rebuilt. So they basically got the okay from the construction guys to go, hey, can we put up like a whole bunch of explosives and smash windows and shit? And they're like, oh yeah, go ahead. And we'll just let you rent some time out here, and you can just go ahead, and it's gonna be dirt cheap renting it, and you can just do whatever as long as you follow your usual safety standards for filming. They couldn't get the stunt guys down there at the time, so so all the bad guys actually got stunt pay for that scene.
But yeah, it's really interesting. Like, the ending is only like slightly different between them because the implications are changed. I don't even know if I want to necessarily go into it, but essentially it goes from being something that could be blamed on religious figures to the US movie changing it to just like a terrorism plot or some shit.
Gotcha. The usual
as to
shit.
what the outbreak is caused by.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yeah, it's
interesting.
And yeah, I think that's all I've really got for that one. But yeah, it's definitely worth checking out.
I find it interesting that a lot of European countries do not pull the punches when pointing at the religion, going, "You're at fault." Some days.
Well, it's interesting in the sense that this is a Spanish film, and Spain is very Catholic. So the fact that they were like
a lot of, at least
ultimately
Western European countries are very Catholic, but even the Italians and the French do not pull punches when pointing the finger at religion and going, "You bad," for whatever bad thing happens in a movie.
Found that even though Spain is very officially Catholic and the U.S. allegedly does not have a state religion, you're still, I think, more free to talk about religion without like a lynch mob than you are in the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually.
So yeah, moving on from that to the sequel. This one is interesting because it's just a direct sequel. And when I say direct, I mean like literally, I think it's set in like an hour.
Yeah, I was gonna say like hours later, like within the same day.
Like it's either it's an hour later or just generally like the idea is that they have not heard from the cop or whoever that they had contact with. It would have been the cop that they had contact with. They haven't heard from him in over an hour, so depending on when he died in the movie, because pretty much everyone dies in the first movie, like basically an hour away from wherever he died, so when they lost contact with him, they send in a bunch of SWAT guys, with the idea being that they're supposed to recover something or just see if there's any survivors and get them out and just try and deal with the situation. And it turns out that there's actually this whole other aspect to it that was sort of hinted at the end of the first movie that they basically flat out state in this one. And it's just like, wait, what? We're dealing with this now all of a sudden? And same building. Interesting thing is that this is the one of the first two where they finally use sets. But it's a matter of filmed in the same building, but the penthouse where a lot of this shit is going down, like a lot of the the first part of the movie is set, they recreated in the set because they wanted to do a bit more with it.
Oh, yeah. They wanted to be a little more destructive with it than they were allowed to, so...
Yeah. And it's just that, like, they needed to make up, like, rooms that didn't actually exist in this penthouse apartment, so...
It's one of those things where you shoot almost all of it on set, but on location, but there's a couple things here or there where you're like, this isn't available, or we can't do what we want to do on a normal on location, so we're gonna make a set so we can get away with what we want to do. We have certain key elements of the film that we want to do that we can't do there.
Yeah. And we get like a little second group because this like group of teenagers have gone that we meet realize that like they come across what's going on because they're evacuated off the top of a different building. And them and a different firefighter and the husband of a woman who was in the first movie all end up in the building before it gets completely sealed off, and they get stuck in there, and it's sort of dealing with these two groups now. And it's interesting because I don't think it's better than the first, but it's not bad. It's not like one of those things where like
it's not like a obviously downgrade, but it's just like it's still it's not like same quality, but it's definitely not terrible. It's a passable sequel.
It's like it's very much definitely like a passable sequel. Like it's not.
Like, I understand people really hate Ghostbusters 2 for a reason. I have no problems with it. It doesn't do anything new, but it's not by any means terrible.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, I like some things introduced, but also the teenagers are like, what are they doing? Like, they saw SWAT go in there. Like, you really think that you're going to get away with sneaking into a building that's being quarantined right now?
Like, they're teenagers. They're dumb. Honestly, I can see that. They're teenagers. They're dumb.
I was going to say, I've met teenagers, and I would say the answer to that question is yes.
I mean, to be fair, I guess one of them, it's only really the guys that are very much gung-ho about, we should sneak in there, it'll be fun. And, like,
so the girls actually have some common sense and they're like, what the hell are you doing?
The one girl of the three is very much like, we'll probably get like shot or something. You really fucking think this is a good idea?
Should have stuck to her guns and stayed in the chopper.
Yeah.
Maybe figure out how to drive this thing and get the hell out.
This is why the Scooby Gang has two girls.
But yeah,
say that, like, but Shaggy's the one who'd be the first one to run away anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely worth watching if you like the first one, and also the ending of this one explains why there are any more movies after this as well, because there's two more that I was almost tempted to, but I was like,
I'll wait.
These two. I didn't want to like clog up Geek Talk too much,
right?
So I'll probably watch them for next week.
All right. Okay, so I guess that moves on to mine then.
Yep.
So, a group called Opus Comics. They are a division that does mostly music-related comic books. Oddly enough, if I can look at the stuff that they do really quick here, I have some extra things ready just in case. They have a Bill and Ted comic book.
Oh.
Is one of the things they're working on. They also have, what was it called again? My brain doesn't want to remember everything. There's another one, the band I can't think of the name of right now. Oh, Disturbed. The only reason I know of Disturbed is because they did a cover of Land of Illusions. That was originally a Genesis song. Land of Confusion, not Illusion.
Ah, yeah.
They did a cover of Land of Confusion by Genesis. That's the only reason I know about them. Apparently, they've got a comic book series based on their mascot guy.
Yeah, that fits.
Mm-hmm. I'm like, okay, I can kind of see that. It's not my thing, but I could definitely see where you guys are going with that. But essentially, they got the okay to work with Frazetta Girls. If you don't know what Frazetta Girls is, Mr. Frazetta, the fantasy artist, is no longer with us, but his daughter and granddaughter have basically started up a business putting out his art on merchandise and stuff, and while they do stuff on their own that's worth mentioning, they also focus on Granddad's stuff and sell it and merchandise it and try and do decent stuff with it. One of the things I got from them is a Death Stalker keychain. Or Death Dealer. I don't know why I keep going Stalker. I got Death Dealer keychain, and I also got glass from them by accident. And I'm like, well, so yeah, sorry, that wasn't that I ordered, and thank you for the glass anyways. But they have now, with Opus, started a Death Dealer comic book. I know they changed the name of the main character who is stuck being, air quotes, Death Dealer. Death Dealer is the name of the guy combined with the Cursed Helmet. Because the Cursed Helmet has its own soul attached to it. I would say that maybe it's the same plan from the original story. However, I noticed that the name has changed, so most likely the character details for Death Dealer has also changed. So it's not tied to the original novels, which also came out in the 80s. Frank Frazetta also made this character originally in like 76 or so, and did a few art pieces and continued to do multiple sketches and so forth afterwards. But, yeah, so Death Dealer is now 2 books in. Apparently, they've been doing really well. A couple of different variants have already sold out. I managed to get my hands on the 2 variants that actually had the original Frazetta art as the covers. And honestly, so far it's everything I kind of would hope for a Death Dealer. They're keeping what the actual origin is a secret. Like I've mentioned, they've not kept the details of the book, so whatever they're planning here, I'm not sure where they're getting their ideas from. But I will say, however, that considering the art for Death Dealer is made by Frazetta, the guy who made Conan as we think of him today, everything I'm seeing in here also smacks very much of Conan, and I'm loving it. Big buff guy, Cursed Helmet, which also talks back to him and gives him a lot of shit. So that's already kind of an amusing odd couple pairing right there. We've been introduced to a couple of lead female characters, both of which are sorceresses and kick ass. And action, romance, giant monster, mutant things, and a possibly undead main bad guy who's trying to get its hands on the helmet. So, a lot of interesting stuff going on, and they are hinting at some definite background story elements, but have not been blunt about it yet. So, hopefully with a couple more issues, they'll slowly unravel some things, and we'll see where the series goes. And as I was mentioning earlier, I found out that the same company that's behind Opus for releasing these comics is also selling merchandise. They have shirts, they have hats, they have pins, and most importantly, I noticed that they have an action figure. And I went, I can't resist. I must have. So I'll be getting a Death Dealer figure in the mail in the next couple days.
Nice.
Nice, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, all in all, so far, really cool stuff. Loving it so far. I hope it keeps going well for them at the moment.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. And that brings us to our episode summary.
Yep. Bring up the stopwatch. There it is.
All right. You want a countdown?
Certainly.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
All right, so we start off the episode. I believe, actually, I think there might have been military originally that we were focused on, or something like that. But we do start also with the TARDIS and crew popping into an underground area. They're not sure where they are at first, but after a bit of looking around, the Doctor does manage to figure out that they apparently are in a subway station, and they need to try and find their way out. Going to the surface, they find a dead man and a lot of locked doors, so they figure out that there's obviously something afoot, but not sure what it is yet. As they continue to search around, they do eventually hide away from the military units as they see a couple of men wandering around. Jamie and Victoria go chasing after them for a little bit before they're brought in, and the Doctor goes off on his own to figure out what's going on, which is when he first encounters the Yeti. Barely managing to hide from them, he is then shocked when an explosion goes off, but thankfully does not harm him, just kind of shocks him with the bright lights and the shockwave coming off of the objects that were cocooned by the Yeti. To try and shorten the back and forth, as characters are dragged in and out constantly in the rest of the story, the TARDIS crew is brought in by the military. They find out that one of the men that they met before, Professor Travers, who was also in the previous Yeti story, is there. It's been about, I think they said, somewhere around 30 or 40 years since the original Yeti story in timeline. They have to kind of explain to him again that, yeah, it's still a time machine, so it's been only a little while for us, but it's obviously been a while for you. They meet his daughter, who's a very handy technician, and they're trying to fix up a device that will hopefully be able to do something to help them against the Yeti. They also figure that the intelligence is there if the Yeti are there, and the Doctor's set about trying to figure out what the plan is, because they were obviously trapped for a while in space before they were able to land, and it must be something that the Great Intelligence is setting up against them. Although as to what and why, they're not sure yet. After a few traps are set up and a lot of the plans go to naught because of someone backstabbing all the military plans going on and sabotaging them with Yeti objects, the group is eventually whittled down to the last couple of members. The news reporter runs off in fear at one point. One of the military men is believed to be okay, but we're not sure if he was a backstabber. Not that mattered much longer, because he eventually is used as a host by the Great Intelligence. This is also our first time meeting the Brigadier, Lethbridge Stewart, before he becomes Brigadier. And he is suspicious acting for a bit, but after he and his men are nearly all killed, he's pretty much on the clear because he just got by the skin of his teeth, and is trying to help the others as they try to sneak their way in to see the Great Intelligence, but also plan to try and sabotage it. The Doctor manages to get another device ready, as well as the main device that they put into another Yeti to fake it as a one of their own until he can be used to help stop things. They also get a small device that allows them to pause the devices, so they were able to stop the Yeti, and he was going to try and put the Great Intelligence's mind into his own. However, that plan comes to naught later on. They finally call upon the Yeti that's on their side, bring everybody in, and in their final attempt to try and rob the Doctor of his intelligence, he was going to rob the Great Intelligence instead, but however, they managed to force him out of the object, and everything just falls apart and disintegrates. The Doctor is frustrated, obviously, but at least he's still safe. And he has to go off trying to figure out where the intelligence will strike next, while leaving the rest of them behind to basically clean up the mess, and hopefully with the Great Intelligence gone, things will clean up again in the streets of London. And that's pretty much where we leave off.
So I see 4 minutes, 34.3 seconds.
Okay, roughly the same place.
And there was a brief pause after I said go before you started talking, so that's a fraction of a second there.
Right. But that covers most of it.
Yep. Before we go into the review, I wanted to comment on one thing. I don't think you planned this, But you said 30 or 40 years from the abominable snowmen. And that's sort of the controversy of this episode and something Rand talked about when we first reviewed it. The writer meant for this set to be 30 years after the abominable snowmen, which would have made it set in the present day. Instead, they said 40 years, which made it 10 years in the future. which caused the whole unit dating controversy that was never really resolved.
Right.
Yeah. Although, funnily enough, it didn't matter as much with the invasion because that was supposed to be set in the 80s, I think. And it's just everything after that kind of screws with it.
It was set shortly after this, which made it the 80s.
Yeah.
So if they had not messed up the date on that, it would have been set in the early 70s.
Which would have been the proper timeline, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. All right. So we start with what we liked about the episode, and according to my die roll, we have Alex first.
Okay. You know, I'll give him credit for the fact that as many red herrings as they throw out, I would not have seen Staff having been the one who was actually being controlled by the intelligence. Even though watching it back, I was like, oh, there are hints pretty early on.
Technically. The one military guy that the one military guy that is later on revealed to be under control is controlled the entire time.
Yeah, like on my first watch, I almost thought it was like when he gets sucked into the web stuff. Somehow that was when he got thingoed. But watching it back and paying attention a bit, I noticed, oh no, there are kind of hints all throughout, really. Like very subtle. Like once you know to look for it, you can find it. But it's like otherwise
before
it doesn't
that
crop up.
So even before he even before he seems to die, he's actually being controlled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems to be why he seems to, yeah.
Which I guess explains why he survives.
Yeah, that explains why he survives, because he can't be he can't die. He's already dead.
Right. So I guess basically what they're actually saying is he was actually dead before episode 1, and we just didn't know about it. Okay.
Yep. The rest of them just didn't know.
Which interestingly means that the Great Intelligence was able to, even though it always speaks in a monotone when it's obviously the intelligence, was able to do Staff Sergeant Arnold's accent for the entire serial, which is interesting.
First half or more of the serial.
He had a very colorful accent too. Dialect, even, not even just an accent. He had a whole different dialect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Matt's next.
Oh, what did I originally write down here? Because I did actually write all my stuff down. Overall, good thing. Continuity. Much of it's really good continuity in the episode. How the Yeti work, how they've been updated, how the intelligence works, and still not fully giving away all the details on the Great Intelligence either. Introducing Travers and his backstory with the crew, and eventually crosses over into Stuart, who becomes a more frequent crossover Earth character.
Right.
Later on, family members included.
Funny note on that. Travers, I believe, was meant to return in the invasion, but they couldn't get. It was either the actor or the rights to the character. One of the two they couldn't get.
I believe there's something up with the actor that they couldn't get him for the invasion. I do recall that.
Yep, but that's why there's a new professor, and I think his daughter or niece.
Yes.
That was supposed to be Travers and Anne. So it would have been even better continuity.
Well, it would have been, but instead the continuity see through after that is just the Brigadier.
Mm-hmm. All right, so it's on to mine then.
Yep.
So I said once the Doctor actually meets the local cast, they don't waste a lot of time on the do we trust the Doctor and all that like some stories do. They pay attention to the fact that he's a suspicious stranger. Like they don't just immediately like not pay anything, but they don't waste a whole bunch of time pointing fingers. Like Anne brings up like, oh, do we really trust the Doctor? But then like 5 seconds later, they're like, what are you talking about? Yes, we trust the Doctor. We've been through enough together. And it's like some stories you'll have that same finger pointing go back and forth for 6 episodes. Here, like, they're as suspicious as they need to be in the situation, but mostly they're focused on finding a solution.
They also point out the fact that all these issues have been popping up well before he even shows up on the scene, so it can't obviously be him.
Right. So yeah, so they're smart about it. All right, so on to what we dislike about the episode, starting with Alex.
I guess I'm not keen on how, like, as much as some of the red herrings are alright, like, I like how they handle the reporter as a red herring, but Evans is just, like, so, like, God, you might as well chuck a bucket of red paint on it. He's that much of a red herring. Like, it's like, wow. It's like to the point that you know it can't be him because it's like, well, this is just so obvious. He's like, he's
Vince
literally
is the driver, right?
Yeah. The guy who's
I'm the
just
driver.
like, oh, yeah. It wasn't me. I'm just a driver. I shouldn't even be here. That kind of thing. It's like,
right.
After a point, he even stops being a red herring. To be honest, he just becomes the fall guy joke.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yeah.
All right. So my least favorite thing, I'm not posed. Let's see here. As fun as most of the story is, it did suffer, from the padding. Just constant back and forth and long hallways that are always the samey looking.
People going out and then coming back and then going out and then coming back.
and just constantly quietly roaming down the same like 2 or 3 halls. Yeah, just I understand that it didn't waste time when plot was moving, but man, you can tell that they realized the plot moved a little too quick and they needed to slow down in betweens, so they took long, egregious takes in those halls, just watching people meander.
Which kind of makes you wonder if maybe this was pitched as like a 5 or even a 4.
Yeah,
Probably
I wonder if maybe it was
5.
supposed to be a 5 or a 4-parter, and they had to add extra padding to make it a 6.
Yeah, and I mean, we've mentioned in other reviews, like pretty much that's the conversation to have about every Second Doctor story. Every single Second Doctor episode, they're like, yeah, but add an extra episode onto it.
Yeah, because they needed time to get more budget back in, and they couldn't just race through the episodes and race through the stories.
It's funny that actually ties back to something that we were talking about before. I think this was before Matt joined the call while we were waiting for you to set up. We were talking about how like some anime really benefited and didn't have to show filler because they realized, hey, let's just take season breaks. And that, improved things a lot. And that's, after the end of Patrick Troughton's run, that's what Doctor Who did. They're like, hey, what if we took season breaks instead of running 50 weeks out of the year? And
that's how
that
they
improved
ran
the storytelling a lot.
That's how they ran the Slayers franchise. They would just, whenever enough story was done, they would make a season out of it, and that would be an entire season run.
Yep. But yeah, for anyone who doesn't know, the entire black and white era of Doctor Who, they pretty much just ran 50 weeks out of the year. Might be generous. It might have been more like 52 weeks out of the year. and they just constantly like each actor like got a chance to have like a 2 weeks off where you would have the doctor knocked into a coma for an episode
The
or
doctor knocked into a
something
coma,
like
or
that.
Jamie gets randomly replaced by Big Bad doing something that messes
Yes.
up their face.
Yeah.
Yes, and that was the only break that they got. And then
Mm-hmm.
eventually they're like, what if we actually just, ran 30 episodes a season and then didn't run the rest of the year and the storytelling improved?
Yeah. Like
Hello, Third Doctor.
the first 6 seasons were like upwards of 44 episodes per season, and then they dropped down to under 30.
Yeah.
with color, so it's like, yeah, gee, wonder.
Now
And I
we've
think
jumped
they're
to
only
10.
really, yeah.
Imagine how much longer Patrick Troughton would have done it if they only had to do like 13 episodes a year.
Oh yeah, because he was burnt the fuck out by that schedule.
Oh yeah.
And if you notice, like the next 2 doctors after him, each ran for 5 or more years because they didn't have to put up with the working conditions the same way.
Mm-hmm. That's why Tom Baker lasted so damn long.
Yeah,
He was ready for. He was probably already basically trained for that kind of acting, and then went, "Oh, I get to have long breaks. Fantastic."
Pertwee would have lasted as long as Tom, but then when Delgado died, I'm pretty sure that's when he was like, I'm out.
That sadly kind of took the thunder out of his sails.
Yeah. Was that Alex's?
Wait, for overall bad thing?
Yeah.
No, that was mine. I did the
That was
padding.
yours. Okay.
So,
So it's on to me now. Okay. So I kind of commented this in our chat when I was confused while watching the episode. The animation, I guess someone decided that certain characters just weren't important enough to have a good model. Because Weems, Arnold, and I think a few other characters just looked identical in the animated episode. I remember, like, I was like, did Burn Gorman just show up in this episode from the faces? I was like, what is going on? Like, I don't recognize, like, this is not the character I recognize. But yeah, I guess they just decided that these characters didn't really need something that actually looked like their face for the animated episode. Even though, like, it kind of is important to know, like, which one's Arnold and things like that going forward.
Honestly, that's what you get with budget 3D anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get really stiff animation, and then you also have to cut corners on how much design time is put into them.
Yeah. And I think that's the first thing in our actual review that's focusing on the animation, but that's what happens when it's one animated episode out of 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
the rest are restored, and they're lovingly restored. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, that animation just generally, when that first showed up, when I got to that episode, I was just like, oh no. Like, just the first shot, because it's just like, who thought 3D animation was a good idea on this budget?
And I mean, and some of the scenes were the kind where it's like, okay, in motion they look a lot better than screen caps do. But even still, they a lot of it didn't look great. But at least when I could tell the characters apart, I didn't mind it.
Yeah.
But when I could, but especially like these characters, like this isn't an episode where you have a whole bunch of red shirts and it doesn't matter to know which is which. Like
this is a relatively tight cast.
Right, like there's it's not a small cast, but every member of the cast has their role to play. You need to know who is who. So when you just kind of replace them with a generic face that doesn't look like anybody, it impacts the story negatively.
Yeah. Like
at least impacts that episode negatively.
Right.
Yeah. And it's funny because, like, you were saying that, like, it looks alright when in motion compared to stuff.
Well,
and all I was thinking
better than the screenshots, anyway.
Yeah.
The screenshots you showed us were god-awful, but the scenes weren't quite as bad.
Right, yeah. It's like, the irony of that is clearly they thought that the animation looks best when it's actually fluid and moving, because in things that would have been live action where they would have been sitting relatively still, they're moving around a lot for no reason, and I'm just like,
yeah.
Why are they moving so much? Like, it's clearly overdoing it. Like, there's scenes where, like, the doctor will be talking, and he'll be, like, slowly moving from side, like, looking around the room, and his whole body's moving, and I'm like, I doubt Troughton was really moving that much, or if he was, it was at a lot quicker pace.
Maybe it was moving a little bit, but yeah, probably not as much as what they animated, because again, they were trying to keep it looking less stilted.
It's one of those things that I honestly think this is the worst animated thing we've looked at so far, because
I don't
Galaxy
know.
Force is a bit jank, but at least that's 2D jank, not 3D jank.
Are you including Dreamland in this?
Yeah. Honestly,
no,
I think
I'd
Dreamland
say that's
was still...
okay, but that's Flash, so I don't expect much from it.
No, Dreamland wasn't Flash. Dreamland was 3D animated like this.
Oh, 3D, yeah, right.
That one, the one where everything clipped through everything.
Yeah,
and the super stilted movement.
Right, yeah, that's what I was getting confused. You know what? I will at least give Dreamland this, that at least the characters looked more distinct and closer to on model to what the actors looked like in some cases. Like the Doctor was very clearly supposed to be David Tennant, just done very cheaply.
At least when he wasn't moving.
Yeah, at least his hair was relatively right. Granted, his hair was easier to do because it was just short and spiky.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but the animation in Dreamland is far worse as far as I'm concerned. It was super stilted and would also frequently cut through its own stuff. I remember,
and also
people
just 3D animation.
Like,
3D animation is an odd choice because it's like 2D made the most sense to me no matter how they were doing it, because it's like, well, this is from stuff in the 60s, stands to reason it would be animated in 2D.
Well, there's that, but also just because it's just such a better thing to work with on a small budget.
Especially like Flash and whatever.
Yeah, especially in Flash, all you have to do is literally trace their faces. And put it into the Flash program, and you're done. I don't know how it has to be so difficult to make these characters look right.
Yeah.
But oh well.
And of course, the sad part is that I told this to Bill before, as I realized, episode 3 was found originally with 2 through 6, and then they lost it again before the BBC got their hands on it.
For fuck's sake.
So... And like the theory going around is that it might have been sold off to a private collector or something. It's like if we'd had it, we wouldn't have had to worry with that.
That or a private investor got involved and snitched it.
And granted, if that hadn't happened, then we would have had this whole episode when we watched it back in 2015 or 2014. But.
Oh well. So that was Bill's least favorite?
Yes, so now we move on to Alex's favorite scene.
I think originally it was going to be something else, but I'm going to go with the scene in the final episode where the Doctor is having a bit of a fit over them fucking up his plan. It's just so funny.
After they win, but not as much as the Doctor wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They still win, but technically not as much of a big win as the Doctor was hoping for.
Yeah.
Patrick, your 9 is showing.
Yeah, because it's very much like you could almost make the argument. I think I almost thought, like, well, you could have told them, but at the same time,
they didn't really give
intelligence might have heard,
yeah,
or like something to that effect. So it's like, can you really tell? You just have to. He just had to trust that they would, leave him to handle everything. And they didn't, because and at least it's Jamie, so it's very realistic that he would be the one who would pull that.
Yeah, would pull him out despite his protests.
Yeah. Whereas if it was Victoria, I think she would have probably just
nervously let
play
go.
out,
Yeah.
maybe.
Which and I kind of like that, because on one hand, Jamie is like, oh, the doctor is going to be all noble and sacrifice himself, but I actually have a way to save him, so I'm not going to let him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and meanwhile, the doctor has his own plan that Jamie doesn't know about. So it's I always like examples when like the companion is fully capable of saving the day without the doctor telling them what to do.
Right.
And that works, except that the doctor had a more far-reaching plan that Jamie had no way to know about.
Mm-hmm.
Because he reversed the polarity. Well,
that's
never
actually
hear that
what I
one
said
again.
when I saw him tweak the helmet down. I
Yep.
reversed the polarity. Okay, put back on. All right. So my favorite moment then.
Yep.
And I quote, "I'm not supposed to even be down here. I'm a driver, I am. Oh, no need to do that. Oh, we'll go for a walk. Oh, fun day for a walk."
You know what? That makes me realize, for all that we've made Clerks jokes on the podcast, it didn't even cross my mind to have a Clerks joke for the opening bump.
Oh.
I mean, I wouldn't have done it because I wanted one focusing on the animated episode anyway. But yeah, he perfectly I keep forgetting his name. Is Evans perfectly fits with the Dante mold there.
Right. I'm not even supposed to be down here. But no, his acting at that moment, but also the suit actors acting at that moment. Because as he's going, oh, you don't need to be doing that. Oh, we're going for a walk. Okay, fine. The suit actors are lifting him off his feet and literally carrying him off. And you really don't see that kind of heavy, almost stunt level acting very often in Doctor Who, but they're just like effortlessly doing it and walking off with him. It's like, holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say, especially because of the railway tracks that they might not have even been able to see properly, that they've got to walk over, but they might have just taken those out because you couldn't see them.
They might have either
shot.
removed them, or they placed everything in such a way that the actors in the suits hopefully didn't have to worry about it, so they just were able to march in there and march back out without any issue. Because either way, that entire little sequence and all of that is just excellent planning either way. You get to show off the threat of the monsters. You get to show a little bit of humor with one of the characters.
Right.
Mm.
And it's just perfectly written and just send off.
And once you take out the red herringness, Evans is the perfect comic relief character for the whole story.
Yeah.
Which is good because the Doctor doesn't have time to do any comic relief in this episode.
Oh, no, he doesn't. He is constantly running around this one.
Yep.
He very much is more of a chess master in this particular episode.
And this is well before the idea of I can't even call him the Brigadier, before Lethbridge Stewart ever became the comic. I don't know if comic relief is the right word, but
the foil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess butt of the joke from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
Where the version of him where it's just like, this shit again.
Oh, can we just have aliens that can shoot, Doctor?
Yes. Just once, I'd like a bullet to work on the alien menace.
I never thought I'd shoot an anger at a dreaded caterpillar.
Which I think transitions to me, and that is a good segue. And I'm glad nobody took this one, because I'm pretty sure this was also my favorite scene. 7 years ago or whenever we reviewed this. I think it's episode 4. The Brigadier finds out the Doctor has a time travel machine, and his first thought is, okay, what do we need to do to get to it? It really cements the Brigadier as this is a character who is going to listen to what you have to say. He's not going to jump to conclusions. He may or may not believe you, but he's still going to do his damn best to solve the problem before he comes up with bullshit.
And he'll see what the actual options are when they get there.
Yep.
Yeah, it is particularly notable that I think he is the only soldier in the whole thing to just kind of not just to actually have that logic moment of, with all the ridiculous shit going on right now, how is that not plausible?
Right. Yeah, there's that. There's that, especially on his end. And he wouldn't have been here for this conversation. Travers has to trust the Doctor at this point because 40 years ago, he saw all three of these people and they looked identical to how they look now. So either they're literally unaging elves or they're time travelers.
There's only two options here, and one of them is a little more scientifically logical than the other.
Whereas Alistair does not have all that background, but he knows he's like, there's fucking Yetis from outer space.
There's Yetis from outer space, and this professor here can protest to the fact that these guys are space and time travelers, so you know, I'll just go with it.
Right. He's like, you know what? Maybe it's bullshit, but bullshit is better than nothing.
Yeah.
All right, least favorite scenes, Alex.
Oh, let's see. I feel like I had something. God.
Come back to you?
It's one of those things of like that many episodes, and I'm just like, oh God, what was
And you're the one who watched it today.
Yeah. To be fair, as I told you before, I was only sort of half paying attention on the rewatch. This one didn't hold my attention as much. Oh God.
Sure you don't want us to come back to you if you think of something?
Do you have anything about
I'll just pass.
I was gonna say unless you have something about the animation to mention, because if Randy was here, he would be harping on us to talk more about the animation, and I'm sure there's a worst scene for the animation.
You know what? I'll go with the bit. Funnily enough, in the animated episode where they're Evans and Jamie are wandering around a station, and Evans is like, oh, you know, just gonna buy some chocolate real quick. You want some? And I'm like, how can you be this like chipper in the situation you're in? And also, like, dude, you do not have time for that. For someone who keeps going on about how he's in a rush to just get the hell out of this place, like, it seems a bit odd that he'd want to stop to just get some chocolate.
So yeah, and it's that sort of suspicious acting that made me actually kind of fall for it. That like, oh yeah, if I had to blame somebody here, he's the one I'd be blaming.
Honestly, I didn't even see that as a red herring for him. I just saw them as he's a guy who just wants out and doesn't care, and he's going to do whatever he wants to on the way there. Because he's not supposed to be here today.
All right, Matt.
Least favorite scene. This kind of ties into my problem with the padding of walking down the halls. The most annoying of which was Victoria being dragged along by brain-controlled Travers, constantly complaining to him, "Please let me go. Please, you're hurting me. Please stop it, Travers. This is not supposed to be what you're supposed to be doing." Even though it was very obviously made very clear the previous scene that he's being mind-controlled. It literally took half of her runtime in the hallways before she actually started to actually think for herself and actually do something proactive. And let's start leaving bread trails and stuff.
There's a reason they wrote her out and brought in a more adaptable companion.
Yeah.
A few serials later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As much as a interesting and character she can be, that very often they wrote her very poorly. I think that whatever it was with her particular being a companion from the past just seemed to tie the hands of the writers for some reason.
She was introduced as a damsel in distress character, and they never really moved her out of that role.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which later on led to Mel, seemingly. Because, like, apparently you can, like, I've seen, like, claims that that's where the, like, Mel was supposed to be kind of a callback to what people thought all the female companions from the 60s were like, when it's like, no, it was probably just Victoria.
Mostly just Victoria. Well, that being said, I don't think it was Victoria. I think it was the previous female companion, was the one that had to scream to defeat the crabs.
No, that about the crab. I was gonna say the
crabs.
Because Victoria has to scream to defeat the monsters in her exit story, which I think is the one we're doing next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Depends. If by crabs you mean the Makra, then that would definitely not be Victoria. I don't remember if there's crabs in Fury from the Deep.
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, the Makra terror. Yeah, they have the same make noise to get them to go away kind of deal, as I recall.
All right, so this is on to me?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I had to rethink mine because Alex pointed out some things I had missed, which kind of made my previous least favorite scene not as bad. So I think I'm actually going to go with the scene that Nat skipped in the summary, which was the cold open, which was basically Travers being a Part 6 Loomis, where he's just basically like yelling about, they're dangerous, it's dangerous, and not really like having the capacity to speak or think beyond those words to the point where he forgets why Anne is there. He's not like that in the rest of the story at all. It's just in that one scene where he's just kind of single-minded. He's like, you wouldn't trust him because he's just yelling and lacks any sort of connection to what's going on around him. And so, I would have to go with that as being the least favorite scene of the story. Then,
just a bad cold opening for that character.
Right. Thankfully, he's not like that the whole story. He's actually able to reason and speak by the time the doctor shows up.
Yeah, by the time the doctor shows up, he finally comes back into himself. The only time he's ever like that again, actually, is when he's being pestered by the reporter.
And funnily enough, almost feel like if there was like a flashback to the Abominable Snowman to like recontextualize this is who this is, like maybe it would make a bit more sense. But
that would take a lot of money.
As someone who hasn't seen the Abominable. Yeah, it's like as someone who hasn't seen the Abominable Snowman, I'm just kind of like, I didn't have any idea that this guy was a previously existing character until it comes up.
I guess the fact that he's talking about the Yeti and about his relationship with the Yeti, I could see that being a decent callback. Although he's only calling back to 2 months earlier for the audience, if that. So it's not much of a callback in that way, but I guess it is good in the sense of like the character has aged. Although I haven't seen a side by side to know if the aging actually looks really different. Which it's really funny how the doctor just stops in the middle of a briefing and he's like, "Oh, they upgraded the Yeti costume or the Yeti puppet or whatever the fuck it is," and it's
cool in the costume.
It's like, I feel like you're breaking the fourth wall a little bit, Doctor.
Well, he just says, "Oh, did you notice the changes in the Yeti? That's an interesting upgrade." Yeah.
Right.
Which is, again, canon. That would be something that would come up if you went, wait, they changed a bit. Okay.
But I think even the one in the cold open is the new design and not the old design.
In the cold open, actually, they start with the old design. It gets inside, and then you see it fade into the new design.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because I did notice that it was a very different shape once it finally became fully active.
Gotcha. Another thing I wanted to mention, and somebody kind of just barely mentioned him for the first time tonight, the so-called reporter, and I say so-called because they're basically hinting that he's more of like a paparazzo, like tabloid actor,
He's more of a
reporter
tabloid writer, yeah.
than an actual, like, he's more like someone for like the Daily Mail or the Sun than an actual like trusted newspaper. And I just kind of, it's something I thought I was thinking about while watching this, because it's like, as a comic book fan, you see like the press treated as, these are super important people, they help to share the truth and they're the superheroes of the real world. And of course, that's because they're coworkers. They work, comics started off in newspapers. They're colleagues. They're people you want to big up each other's work. Whereas television and movies, they see the press as, oh, these are the people who, whenever I'm on vacation, try to take a photo of me in my bikini. They're the people who are always trying to figure out who I'm dating. So I just thought that it's interesting seeing the juxtaposition between how the press is treated in like a comic book versus how it's treated in a TV show. And I do kind of wish there was more of a middle ground, even though, like, I feel like the press more and more is moving toward what the character in this episode is accused of.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would prefer if the press was more like what comics think they are, but they have really kind of started skidding down that road. They were already skidding down that road pretty hard in the 90s, but they hadn't gone completely full blown yet at that point.
I mean, I definitely think the culture around the internet has been a huge part of that, because, like, for a responsible press, you need the patience to, like, spend a month putting together all the facts of a story and then publish it and then have an editor look at it and make sure you didn't fuck up. Whereas nowadays, they're like, that news is 45 minutes old. Where's your article?
Right.
But that's kind of going off on a tangent that I didn't quite mean to go off on.
Clickbait, clickbait.
Any final comments on either the animation or anything else before we go into final thoughts?
I do agree that it's very polygonal and sometimes stiff, but honestly, for some of the key moments that come out of that episode, it was definitely necessary.
Okay.
I just wish they wouldn't have used 3D. That it obviously tied their hands and they were too rushed.
Right. I guess they figured that was the most cost-efficient way to do the episode.
Yeah.
But, yeah. All right, so final thoughts, starting with Alex.
Yeah, this is one where, like, I feel like a lot of what helped this story the first time through was just some of the music is good, and some of the shots are oddly cinematic for 60s Doctor Who. Like, even just like leaving it on the main menu of the Blu-ray, I'm just like, wow, some of these shots look, at least for someone like me who hasn't seen a lot of Troughton stuff, I'm just like, wow, some of these shots are actually really cinematic. That's kind of odd for Doctor Who back then. But yeah, like, I remember really liking this the first time through, and then the second time through just didn't hold my attention anywhere near as much, where pretty much everything else we've done, I've gone out of my way to make sure I rewatched properly.
I just think you're distracted or something today.
Possibly. Granted, my PC is supposed to be showing up today, so
that's probably part of it.
I was probably sort of worried that it would show up while I was doing my rewatch. And thus, because I had my laptop on, I was getting distracted. But yeah, even sometimes I'll just be like, oh, I'll just leave it and check periodically. But yeah, I feel like this is one that either just needed tweaks here and there to justify the 6 episodes, or probably could have been. I hesitate to say 4 because I feel like this probably actually could have justified 5, but just not 6. It's not. It doesn't feel as much of a drag as like the Web Planet, which is my go-to at this point for like stories that really should not have been 6 because it's just an
chop
hour
this in
too.
half.
It feels like an hour
cow.
too long.
Less dragged out than the Web Planet is kind of like saying, okay, you passed the bar that was on the floor.
Yeah.
You don't really even have to step over that bar.
Right. But like, it doesn't do it as bad, and like the story's good enough that it doesn't bother me as much as it normally would. Like, you look at something like the War Games, which is 10 episodes of people running away, getting caught, running away, getting caught, running away, getting caught for 9 episodes. But at least to me, the story is compelling enough that I can watch that whole thing through, and I have like 3 or 4 times. So, it's one of those things where if I gave it a bit of time and came back, I would probably enjoy this a bit more. And it's not that it's like god awful or anything. It's just that it's like it just needs that bit more to really ramp it up, because in some points I feel like it's not even so much the fact that they're going back and forth among the same corridors so much as just there's a lot of standing around talking and not as much like energy in some scenes, where it's like you would think that things would be a bit more frantic with everything that's going on. Or just that they could try for a bit more atmosphere, which once they realize that someone's clearly working for or being possessed by the intelligence, there's that sort of the thing kind of like, oh, who is it?
Yeah, they could have gone for a little more tension to help spice things up a bit.
Yeah. But either way, I would still say this is worth watching, but good lord, this is one where I almost kind of hope that someone with a lot of money watches this and goes, that animation was fucking terrible, and just takes a bunch of money to the BBC and says, here, use this, redo that.
Or better yet, just reanimates them themselves and heads over to the BBC and he goes, here, this is better than what you have for your version. Just go ahead and use it. I don't even care. Just put my name up there as the animator. That's all I care about. Good day. But is that it?
Yeah.
All right. So going back to what I've already written down before. Final thoughts. I remember watching the stills version of this back in the day. It was so dry I skipped to the end to figure out what happened, and even then I didn't really understand. Not only is this great to see most of the episodes back, despite the cheapness of the animation, it's good to see things make more sense for especially key moments in the story. Just thankful it wasn't action-heavy episode that was missing due to the animation being kind of iffy 90s PC looking animation, if you know any 90s PC games that tried full 3D. But otherwise, the story is, for the most part, really well done. Just wish that they could have directed some of the unneeded padding out. But I guess at the time, they still needed to fill an extra episode to help make the money flow a little bit better over the season. So, yeah, obviously more of an issue with the era more so than the actual story itself. And that's pretty much it.
Okay, so my final thoughts. So I guess the most important final thoughts is, does the animation change anything about the rating of the story? I think it's definitely nice to have some visuals to put to that story. But I don't know if they quite live up, especially since one of the big issues with which episode was missing was that it includes the very first scene of Alistair Lethbridge Stewart, and now it's in this animation style, which I don't know if that's. I guess it's an improvement over
It's definitely an improvement over dry stills.
But yeah, it's not as much of an improvement as we might have liked.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the animation doesn't hugely detract from the overall story, partially because it's just one episode that's kind of in the middle. Overall, this is a very solid story. It probably could have been trimmed in the sense of having less leave the base, come back to the base, leave the base, come back to the base. But I never really felt like it was dragging on. Maybe that's because I watched it over 3 days. At least I think I did. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did.
Yeah, you took longer breaks than the rest of us, I think.
Yeah. I don't know how I would have felt if I watched it over 6 weeks, like the actual people at the time would have.
Difficult to do.
Right. If there's anything interesting to say, I feel like there was something else I was going to say, but ultimately, it's probably something that I said when we first reviewed this. So yeah, I guess that's really the end of final thoughts, and we move on to ratings.
Mm-hmm.
Alex.
Ooh. You know what? I think as of right now, while this rating could go up, at the moment, I'm sitting on a 4.
4.0. Okay. Matt?
I'm thankful that the animated episode is not a particularly egregious episode that I've been missing, just that we were missing some context and a few details, which we now have. So things are a little more clarified as to what are going on in that episode. That being said, this very much does feel like a prequel to the invasion, and the invasion is far and above for me a 5.0. This is definitely a 4.5. It's not quite there yet.
So your rating has not changed from the first time we reviewed the episode then?
It's pretty much stayed about the same.
4.5.
4.5, yeah.
Okay. So I gave this a 4.0 at the time. And while I would really like to be able to give this episode a 5, in its current state, I think it might be better than a 4.0, but I still can't give it a 5. So I'm going to give it a 4.5, and if we ever find episode 3, then I might change that to a 5.
Yeah. If we can get those finer details even better, yeah, that might actually change my opinion, but it's still staying 4.5 for me.
So Randy gave this a 4.5 back when we first reviewed this. Aaron gave it a 4.0, and Tim gave it a 4.5 after the fact. So with adding Alex's 4.0 and upgrading mine from a 4.0 to a 4.5, the average rating actually has not changed at all. It is still a 4.3 out of 5, the same place it already was.
So it is unmoved unless Randy has changed his mind, which he'll have to tell us later.
Right. So that puts it on par with the Dalek invasion of Earth, the Battle of Ranskorav Kolos, Spearhead from Space, the Witchfinders, Waters of Mars, the Ark in Space, Demons of the Punjab, and the Keys of Marinus. It is not quite as good as the Three Doctors, Nightmare in Silver, or the Ice Warriors. And it is better than the 10th Planet, the Unquiet Dead, the Rescue, The Last Christmas, Terror of the Autons, Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead, and many, many things that we've given a 4.25 to over the years. And it is currently at the place of number 105 out of 420 things that we've reviewed. So in the meantime, for those listening, please let us know in the comments, what do you think of the Web of Fear? Particularly, what do you think of the animated episode? Don't forget to check our original review of the episode and to subscribe on YouTube to get our exports every week, or follow us on Twitch to get our streams every Tuesday night. And I left the tab forgetting I still had this line that I normally don't. So join us next week, assuming that all is going well, for the Fury from the Deep animated reconstruction, written by Victor Pemberton and starring Patrick Troughton as a doctor, Fraser Hines as Jamie McCrimmon, and Deborah Watling as Victoria Waterfield. We'll see you then.
Have a good night. See you all next time.